Hey everybody, this is Sonia with Melanin Goddess Life. I hope you are having an awesome, fantastic day today. I hope you are also staying safe, but getting out and doing something fun and exciting. So today's video, we are going to talk about how I manifested my dream job as a flight attendant. And the reason I want to do this video is because I came across something that reminded me of my journey and obtaining the career of a flight attendant, which was my dream job. I was cleaning up today, going over some, doing some cleaning of a closet that I should have cleaned out a long time ago, and I ran across this binder right here. So I was looking at the binder. I said, well, let me see what's in it before I throw it out. And I noticed that it has some goals that I wrote down for myself in 2011. And the first goal on here is to obtain a flight attendant position. And then I put an asterisk by the airline I wanted to work for. So I'm not going to say the airline that I want to work for, but you guys can put two and two together. So we're going to talk about how I manifested it, because it brought back memories on how this came about. I'm going to try to make this story as short as possible, but make sure you get all the details on how I did it. Okay, so looking back, I think the first time that I thought about having a career as a flight attendant was probably back in 1989. I had a cousin who was a flight attendant. She loved doing it. She always talked about all the great places that she went to, and I just felt like that was the job for me. So at the time, I had a 2-year-old daughter. She may have been just shy of turning 2 years old, but I had a 2-year-old daughter. I was 20 years old at the time, and I was going to try to have this job as a flight attendant. So at the time, the way they used to do it what they call a cattle call, which was they would put, now this is pre-internet, web, anything online. So everything was done through the newspaper. So they had a, well, actually, I didn't even see it in a newspaper. My cousin told me they were having an open house, a cattle call for flight attendants. So I decided I was going to go. I go to the cattle call. It's an all-day process. Long story short, I didn't get it. Okay, fine. Maybe a couple of years later, they had another cattle call. I remember going to this one, and I remember I had such a hard time getting there. It was just, it was a thing with transportation with me. I just could not get, I didn't have my own car, so I was depending on someone to take me. It was just a whole mess. And by the time I got to the interview, I was so frazzled and just so out of it that I don't even think I stayed for that second interview. But anyway, so that was the first introduction to me wanting to be a flight attendant. I knew I wanted to do this, but for some reason, it was not happening because I don't feel like I was prepared at the time. And then on top of that, I had a small child, and in all honesty, I didn't know enough about the job to know that I could probably do the job and have a small child. And I don't think I really had the support system at that time anyway. So I put that on the back burner. So fast forward, like, let's see, from 1989 maybe to 2010, fast forward, I go on, I get a career in the hospital industry. I'm doing that, and that's my life, and it's a pretty good life. You know, it's a stable career. I earned stable money. I was able to support myself and my children. By that time, I had 2 children, and it was fine. However, it was not for me. I knew in my heart that this was not for me long term. So my daughter graduated from high school. She went off to the military, and at that time I still had my son at home. So around the time he was getting ready to graduate from high school, and I think that must have been around 2010 if I'm not mistaken, or 2011. I can't remember, but anyway, I think maybe in the 11th grade, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so fast forward. I'm working at this 9-to-5 job, and I'm not loving it. It's just a paycheck, and that's it. But in the meantime, okay, so I had a salon in the back of my house, which gave me an outlet for my creative side because it definitely wasn't happening with the job that I had. So I had a nice clientele, and I had a young lady that was coming there to get her hair done. And the funny thing about it, we would have these nice conversations, but I never knew what she did for a living. So one day she came in for an appointment, and she had like this binder that she was looking in, and she was going over this it looked like just a bunch of gibberish to me. I didn't know what it was. And I inquired as to what it was she was looking at. And she said basically she was looking at her schedules, the available schedules for work. And I was like, you know what? You've been coming to me for quite some time now getting your hair done, and I don't even know what you do. And she says, I'm a flight attendant. And I'm like, oh my God. And the first thing out of my mouth was, that's something that I've always wanted to do. And she said, really? She said, yeah. She said, I think you would be a great flight attendant. Now, this young lady was working for the airline that I wanted to work for. Okay. So I was like, yeah, I said, just never kind of happened, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. But she knew that I wanted. So at that time, I just told her that I wanted to be a flight attendant. And she said, okay. So of course, the airline was not hiring. We went on with our relationship. It actually developed into a really, really good friendship. We are now still friends to this day, and I continue to do her hair. So I can't really remember what happened after that because it was a while before we talked about it again. So we never talked about it again. So I still had a full-time job at the hospital, working 8 to 5, well 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it. Something happened whereas I was laid off. Okay, this is where it really starts to pick up and goes in that direction. Now, mind you, from 1989, I've been wanting to do this job, but I couldn't get it off the ground. Okay, and I always talk about timing and manifestation. Timing means everything. Fast forward, and it must have been about 2009-ish when she and I were having this conversation. 2009, I meet this wonderful lady who's a flight attendant, and we have a brief conversation about me wanting to be a flight attendant, and she's saying that she felt like that I would make a great flight attendant, and that was the end of the conversation. We never talked about it again. So it must have been about 2009-ish, I got laid off from my job. And at that point, I got laid off, and I was like, okay. I went home, I thought about it, because this is the first time I pretty much had been laid off from a job, so I was like, oh, okay. So the first thing popped into my head was, okay, I'm laid off, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to pursue a career in being a flight attendant. Because about this time, I think my son must have been in the 11th grade, so he was close to graduating. So I felt like he would be old enough to handle it with me being away. So I said to myself, I'm going to try to pursue a career in being a flight attendant. I hadn't done it since like 1989 and maybe again in 91. But here we are, I think it was 2009. I'm going to try it again. So I set my intentions to get this job. And I was like, okay, fine. I set my intentions to get this job. So I started going to open houses for flight attendants. I started applying online at different airlines. I was applying for everywhere. Now, keep in mind, the airline that I wanted to work for was not hiring. And they really didn't hire a lot because if you know anything about the flight attendant career, we never leave our jobs. So I was applying at every other airline that there was. And I actually had an interview with an airline that I kind of wanted to work for, but I kind of blew that interview because I was nervous. And I'm normally a good interviewer, but for some reason I was nervous. So, in the meantime, the young lady that I was doing her hair, I expressed to her, I said, hey, I'm going to start looking for a job as a flight attendant. Any pointers you can give me? She gave me some pointers, blah, 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 and everything. So it was going on, and nothing was happening. So what happened next was my practical side kind of kicked in, and I started to get worried about not having a job. So at that point, I was like, well, the thing is not popping off with being a flight attendant. I better find a job. So I went and I found a job, basically the same type of job that I was already in, which was fine. But I still was like, this is not it. This is not it. I really want to do this. So this is about the time I got the new job. And I was there for, I think, probably a year, maybe a little over a year. possibly, but it was a year. And I met some really nice people. I enjoyed the people I work with, and not necessarily enjoyed the job that I was doing, but I enjoyed the people I was working with, and I was okay with it. But I still had that lingering thought in my head, I want to be a flight attendant. And it just would not leave my head. So every year I write down my goals for the next year. So I wrote down in this book that I was, as I said, obtain a flight attendant position, and I put a little asterisk with the name of the company that I wanted to fly for. And like I said, I'm not going to say it, but you guys can put two and two together. And that was going to be my goal for 2011. So I started over again applying. Now keep in mind, the company that I want to work for is still not hiring. So I'm applying everywhere. Nothing is happening. So one day I said to myself, okay, I am going to give this search another 6 months. I'm going to put my energy into getting a position as a flight attendant for the next 6 months. And if it doesn't happen within the next 6 months, I'm going to take that as the universe's way of saying, this is a career not for me. This career is not for me. I'm going to move on. And I was planning on going back to school to obtaining a degree or something, but I was going to pursue another avenue as far as my career. And that's what I said. Fine. That's what I put out into the universe. So again, I kept going. Nothing was happening. Well, one day the young lady comes to get her hair done, because keep in mind, I'm still doing, on the side, I still have my salon business. She comes to get her hair done, and she says to me, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" She goes, "We're going to start hiring tomorrow. We're opening up the application process tomorrow." Now, fast forward, we're now at the internet now, so everything is online. So she's like, "Yes, we're starting to hire." And I'm like, "Really?" Now, you have to understand, they hadn't hired in decades. So I was like, "Are you sure?" She says, "Yes. Her mom's a flight attendant. My mom knows someone that works in human resources that told her we're going to start hiring, and the application is going to be open on tomorrow." So she says, "Get your resume ready," which was already ready, so you can apply. Okay, so the next day comes, I get to work. Yes, I was using the company computer. And first thing I do is log on, and I go on the website, and I don't see the position to apply for flight attendant. And I'm thinking to myself, I knew they weren't hiring. I knew they weren't hiring. They haven't hired in decades. Why would they be hiring now? So I was just like, well, forget it. So I went on with the course of my day, went to lunch. I came back from lunch, and I know it must have been about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, you know what? Let me just take one more look, and let me see if it's on there. I go back on the website. Bam! There it is. Flight attendant position. It's open. You can apply. And I'm like, oh my God. So I apply for the position. Everything, yada, yada, yada. I call my friend. I tell her, okay, I applied. Yada, yada, yada. So if anybody knows about applying for a flight attendant position, it can go one of two ways. You can hear back from them immediately, or this could take forever. And I'm talking like years. So you just never know. You just apply and you move on. So I applied. Probably a week, maybe 2 weeks later, I got an email from them saying that my application had been moved on to the second phase of interviews, or blah, 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 blah. And then if they wanted to talk to me, they would contact me. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I call my friend. I tell her, okay, I moved on to the next phase. And she's all excited and everything. So next thing you know, probably like a week later, if that, I got another email that said I was selected to go on to the face-to-face interview. And, then they gave you the number you needed to call and the dates that were available for the interviews. So I call them. I finally get through, and I make my appointment date, my interview date was going to be the first day of interviews. Now keep in mind, I applied on the first day that they opened the applications, and I secured an interview on the first day that they started interviewing. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I tell my friend that, and she's all excited. Probably A few hours later, she calls me back and she was like, I need a favor. And I'm like, what do you need? They needed recruiters to do the interview process that they were starting, in a couple of weeks. And she wanted to apply. And I'm like, oh, okay. She says, well, I'm on a trip right now. Could you, if I send you this information on my resume, can you clean it up for me and then send it back to me so I can send it to them? No problem. She sends me the information. I clean up her resume because I'm really good at resumes. I clean up her resume for her, send it back to her. She's like, okay, I'm going to send this into them now, and I'll let you know what happens. She sends it into them. She calls me back in about 30 minutes and says, you won't believe this. And I'm like, what? She says, I have an interview tomorrow to for the recruiter position. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is happening. But this is the power of manifestation. This is the power of putting what you want out into the universe. This is the power of, believing it and walking into it. The universe will put the people and the things that you need in your path in order for you to succeed. So, long story short, she gets the job as a recruiter. She writes me this beautiful letter of recommendation, yada, 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 the whole 9 yards. So I'm ready. I get to the interview. The interview is split up into 3 parts. So it's an all-day process. It's stressful as hell. And, oh my God. So I make it through. I make it through to the last interview. So the last interview is like the big interview with the executives and everything. So it's like a room full of them, and it's just you, and they're asking these questions and yada, yada, yada. And I'm feeling good about the interview. I'm feeling amazing. And I'm like, I got this. So I remember my cousin telling me, if they don't offer you a position in training at that moment in the interview, then you didn't get it. I was like, okay, so I knew that they were going to offer me a position there. And if they didn't and they sent me home, that was a wash. It wasn't going to happen. So I'm feeling good in the interview. I'm feeling really positive in the interview. And I'm like, everything's going well because I interviewed really well. Next thing you know, the gentleman says to me, well, thank you so much for coming. We're going to review your application a little bit further, and then we'll get back to you. Oh my God. Now, I didn't want them to see my face break, but inside I was crumbling because I could not believe, because I just remember my cousin telling me, if they don't offer you a position in training the day of and they send you home, you didn't get it. So I keep my composure, thank everyone, and then I leave out of the building and I go to my car. So I get in my car and I'm trying to go over in my head, where did I go wrong? Because everything was perfect. Where did I go wrong? So I was like, okay. And I think I was definitely disappointed about not getting it, but I was a little bit more disappointed about having to tell my friend that I didn't get it, because she was really, really on my side about it, and she was just so ecstatic and so happy for me to get the interview. So I was kind of a little bit bummed about having to tell her that I didn't get it. Okay, so here's where it gets good. So after I get myself together and okay, well, it's done, I immediately start thinking about, okay, well, it's time for you to figure out what you're going to do enrolling in school, blah, 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 blah. So I pull out and I'm leaving out of the parking lot. So as I'm coming up and getting ready to turn to leave out of the parking lot, I noticed the gentleman from inside from the interviews. He comes out of the building and he's standing at the end of the stairway. So I'm, kind of driving slow through the parking lot. He motions for me to stop. Now at this point I'm thinking, oh, okay, I must have left something in the building that he wants. He says, can you park your car and come back into the building? And I was like, okay. I really didn't know what was going on. I was thinking, well, maybe I left something. So I park my car, I get out, he's waiting for me at the door. He says, we just want to talk to you one more time. So in my mind I'm thinking, okay, this is it, Sonia. This is your moment. They're bringing you back. You gotta do something. You gotta razzle dazzle them. So I get back in the room. I'm sitting down, and one of the gentlemen that was sitting towards the back of the room, he was, I forgot his position, but he was really high up in the company. I can't remember what he did. And he said to me, he says, Yeah, we wanted to talk to you just a little bit further. We just had just some questions that we just wanted to make sure we got answered before you left. So we appreciate you coming back in. So he says to me, he says, I'm looking over your resume. You got a lot of experience with customer service, this, that, and the other. And he was like, I just want to know, what is your definition of a flight attendant? And in that moment, I said to myself, Sonia, this is the moment. This is the make or break moment. Whatever answer you give is going to determine whether or not you get this job. This is all going through my head. And I never forget what I said. And I don't know where this came from. Because at this point, he's sitting up, kind of like in a very authoritative stance, the way he has his body positioned. So he's like ready. He's ready. So I said to myself, okay, you can do this. And I opened my mouth and I said, for me, a flight attendant is the ambassador to the airline. A flight attendant is the face of an airline. It doesn't matter if the customer has talked to reservationists. It doesn't matter if they come in and go to the ticket agent, go through security. It doesn't matter how many people they encounter on their way to their flight. Their flight doesn't become real until they see that flight attendant's face as they board the airline, as they board the aircraft. And I was looking at him, and when I said that and I finished, and he didn't say a word. He just kind of like relaxed and folded his arms. I knew right then I had it. So the gentleman that's sitting here, he says to me, well, you see how you went out the first time and then you had to come right back in, and how things changed within a few moments? I said, yes. He says, that's pretty much the life of a flight attendant. So I just want you to know what you would be experiencing when you become a flight attendant. And with that being said, we would like to offer you a position in training. And we would love to have you on here if you will have us. And I was like, yes! Yes! So on that day, it was not October, it was September 19th, 2011, I secured a position as a flight attendant. Well, I secured a position in training as a flight attendant, and then I graduated October the 20th, 2011 as a flight attendant for the airline that I always wanted to work for. And this is how I manifested my dream job. It may have taken me from 1989 to 2011 to manifest it, but I know for a fact that if I had secured that job any time earlier than what I did, I would not have liked it. I would not have embraced it. I probably wouldn't have stuck with it, because it wasn't the divine time for me to have that job. I could tell with the struggle that I was having trying to get it, it wasn't for me. And that's for me. I always know when something is not for me. If I have to struggle with it, especially if I've done the research and I've done the work and everything, but it's a constant struggle, I know it's not the divine time. I'm not going to say it's not for me. It's just not for me at that time. So when I secured that job on September 19, 2011, I knew it was time for me. And it has been a blessing ever since. I have been so blessed to have a career that I love going to work every day that I have to go to work, that I go to work. I love being able to see the United States. I love being able to know that I have traveled to countries that I've only seen in magazines and I've never thought that I would actually be able to go to. I mean, just some phenomenal places all over Europe, in the Caribbean, just everywhere. And it's just been an absolute joy. So I know the power of manifestation, and that is how I manifested my dream job as a flight attendant. I hope I didn't make this too long. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Also, If you are in need of manifestation candles or metaphysical tools, please visit my Etsy store at etsy.com, Melanin Goddess Life. Please follow me on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Melanin Goddess Life, and then like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.